The carpet was turning brown, not slowly, fast, like something underneath was bleeding through. I was on the phone with my brother Dale, and I said, "Hold on," and I walked over and pressed my boot into it, and water squeezed up around the sole. I hung up. "My name is Terry Aldous. I'm 53, from Harlan County, Kentucky. Lived here my whole life. I've heard the stories of the floods. Everyone has. Your grandparents went through one in 57, then your parents in 84. And you nod at the table, and you file that as useful information somewhere. You hadn't. The creek behind my property is called Clover Branch. It's maybe 15 feet wide when it's behaving. 4 days of hard October rain, and it stops behaving. I'd watched it that afternoon from the back fence. It looked high, looked fast, but it was still in its banks. I went inside and made dinner. That was my mistake. Not a dramatic one, just I went inside and made dinner. By 9 o'clock, the water was under my back door. It didn't pour in. That's the thing nobody tells you. It seeps. It comes in under the gap at the door frame, up through places you didn't know had gaps. The sump pump was running. I could hear it cycling, this low mechanical churn from the basement. And then it changed pitch. Higher. Straining. I opened the basement door and shined my flashlight down the stairs. Water was already at the 4th step. The pump was working against something it couldn't beat. Then the pitch changed one more time, and it stopped. That sound. The absence of it. The basement was already gone. Nothing to do down there. I shut the door and moved. The sandbags were in the garage, still wrapped in plastic from the hardware store. I'd bought them on sale in 2019 and never touched them. Ripped the plastic off with my teeth. Carried them around back 2 at a time in the rain. Stacked them against the door. My rain jacket soaked through inside 10 minutes. Didn't matter. Just kept stacking. Finished. Stepped back. The water went around them. Not over. Around. Through the gap by the hinge side. Up from the saturated ground like the whole earth was just full and had nowhere else to put it. I stood there and watched it happen, and I thought, not felt, thought, this is going to be expensive. Inside, Sergeant was on the couch. He's a beagle, 30 pounds. Knows he's not allowed up there. I pointed at the floor. He got down. I called 911. Recording. All lines are currently busy. Please hold. 14 minutes. I know because I watched the timer on my phone. 14 minutes standing in my kitchen with water at my ankles, cold through my boots, watching the baseboards go dark. A dispatcher who answered, she'd been at it a while, I could hear it. She said, "Is there water in your home, sir?" "Yes." "How high?" I looked down. "Ankle." "Go upstairs, take your pet, your medications, your phone. Do not attempt to drive." "Got it." "We have rescues all over the county. Someone will get to you." She meant it as reassurance. It wasn't really. But it was honest, and honest was what I needed. I grabbed the medications from the cabinet, grabbed Sergeant, grabbed my phone charger and a box of crackers and my flashlight. I walked to the counter where my keys were sitting, and I picked them up and held them for a second. Put them down. Carol used to say I thought I could muscle through anything. She said it like a flaw. Standing there with wet boots in my own kitchen, I took it as a warning. I went upstairs. Here's the thing about waiting. You've done what you can do. The decisions are made. And so you sit on the edge of your bed with a flashlight and a beagle in your lap, 30 pounds of him, warm and heavy. And you listen to your house. Water moves furniture. Did you know that? A sofa doesn't float exactly, but it shifts. You hear the legs scrape. You hear things knock against walls. Somewhere downstairs, something fell over, and I didn't go look. Couldn't. Just sat there cataloging sounds. The china cabinet. Carol's. I'd moved it across 3 houses in 18 years because she wanted it, and I didn't argue about things like that. Heavy oak, glass front. It was in the corner by the window, and the window faced the creek. I sat upstairs and thought, that cabinet is gone. Not, I can't bear to lose it. Just gone. I turned the main breaker off around 10. The house went dark, except for my flashlight and Sergeant's eyes catching the beam when he looked up at me. Reached for my phone, opened the Notes app, started a list. Structural inspection, flooring, all of it. Drywall to 4 feet, maybe higher. Electrical, sump pump replacement. Call insurance first thing. The photos. I hadn't thought about them until right then. Bottom drawer of the TV stand, downstairs, in a heavy-duty metal cookie tin. The old kind with a latching lid and the winter scene pressed into it. I'd put them in there years ago because Carol had a thing about photos and albums getting stuck together. I'd bought that tin specifically because it's sealed. Was it enough? I didn't know. I wrote, photos, check 10. Then I said out loud, to no one, to Sergeant, to Carol, I don't know. I said, okay, how much worse can this get? Carol and I used to do this. War Council, we called it. Sit at the kitchen table and say the worst version of the thing out loud so it couldn't get bigger in the dark. She was better at it than me. She could hold the fear and the plan at the same time. I always got stuck in the fear part. She taught me to move through it. I went through the whole list, said it out loud. Worst case, worst case, worst case. Then I asked myself what I could do about each thing. Write it down. Call tomorrow. Find the number. One step. It took about 20 minutes. Then I lay back on the bed with Sergeant on my chest, and I didn't sleep, but I stopped spinning. That's all the War Council ever does. Stops the spinning. Carol knew that. The water peaked somewhere around 2 a.m. The sound of it changed, less aggressive, less constant, and I opened my bedroom door and shined the flashlight down the staircase. Water was 4 steps up from the bottom, maybe 2 feet in the downstairs, maybe a little more. I went back to bed. Dawn came gray and still. I pulled on my boots, still wet, cold as metal, and went down. The smell hit first. Mud and standing water and something underneath that, something organic. Drywall starts going almost immediately. There's a particular smell to wet drywall that I can't describe except that once you've smelled it, you know it forever. Sour and dusty at the same time. Wrong. The floor was covered in a thin layer of silt, brown-gray, fine as flour. My boots left prints. Everything that had been on the lower shelves was on the floor or had shifted. The TV was off the stand. The couch had moved 1.5 feet toward the kitchen. The china cabinet was face down. I walked over, stood above it. The glass had broken and there were pieces of it in the mud. The drawers were open and swollen. I left it. Over by the window, the TV stand was still there. I got down on my knees in the wet silt, soaked through my jeans immediately, and pulled open the bottom drawer. The cookie tin was on its side. Winter scene on the lid, still there. I picked it up. The latch had held. I pressed my thumb against it anyway, just to confirm it, and it was solid. I shook it slightly, felt the weight move inside. Dry sounding. I sat down in the wet and I opened it. The edges of a few photos had gone soft with moisture. The ones in the middle were fine. I went through them with my thumb, not looking yet, just checking. All there. Damp on the outside edges, fine in the middle. I gave myself 5 minutes. Then I got up and went back to the list. By 9 a.m., Sandra Perkins was in my front yard with a mop. I don't know why the mop got me. It just did. Her husband, Greg, was at the hardware store getting a wet vac. She told me that straight off. Logistics first, the way people from here talk. And she'd come ahead with what she had. She said, "You okay?" I said I was. She looked at me. "You don't look okay." 2 feet of water downstairs overnight. "I know. We had 6 inches. Lucky." She walked past me into the house, started mopping. Ruth Beatty from across the street came an hour later. She's mid-70s, moves careful, but she crossed the wet street carrying a tray of sandwiches like it was nothing remarkable. She said she'd made too many. That was it. That was the whole explanation. I understood what she meant. Greg came back with Desmond from down the block. Desmond had bought the old Calhoun place 2 years back, him and his wife Patrice. Desmond's maybe 32, quiet. He walked in, looked at the room, looked at me. "Inside or outside?" "Outside." He started carrying things. Patrice came by lunch. She's a nurse. She saw my hand before I even knew about my hand. It was a cut on the heel of my palm. I must have caught it on something, maybe the cabinet glass, and she cleaned it and put a bandage on it without making it a thing. By mid-afternoon, I counted 9 people in and around my house. 9. At some point, Greg and I were pulling out a run of baseboard, the wood black with moisture, soft enough to bend, and he said almost to himself, "This is the thing about living somewhere your whole life. When it falls apart, you're not alone." I kept pulling at the baseboard. Didn't answer. Thought about it for a long time, though. The next 3 months were hard. Brenda's couch for 6 weeks. My sister, 3 kids under 10, small house, sergeant nervous around kids, me trying not to be a burden and failing at it regularly. Grateful and desperate to leave, both at once, the whole time. Insurance was what it was. Standard homeowner's policy. No flood rider. Rising groundwater isn't a covered peril under a standard policy. Doesn't matter if it comes from a creek or the sky. If it comes up from the ground, they don't pay. My house wasn't in a designated flood zone on the official maps, so I'd never been required to carry separate flood coverage. Clover Branch doesn't know anything about official maps. So the repairs fell mostly on me. I had $14,000 in savings. The estimates came back higher. What I didn't know, what nobody tells you until you're in it, is FEMA has an individuals and households program for federally declared disasters. The county qualified, which meant I could apply for assistance toward uninsured losses, repairs, temporary housing, that kind of thing. The paperwork was substantial. The phone holes were long. Twice I got close to letting it go. There's a woman at the County Emergency Management Office, Bev Hutchins. She walked me through every form. She called back when she said she would. She told me what language to use in the documentation, what receipts to keep, what to photograph. She cared whether I got through it. I got a grant. Didn't cover everything. Covered enough. January. Back in the house. Vinyl plank floors new throughout the downstairs. More water resistant. Learned that lesson the expensive way. The new drywall was white and flat and unmarked, and it didn't feel like mine yet. Everything a little bare. A lot of the furniture was gone, some of it replaced with stuff Brenda helped me find at estate sales, some of it just not replaced. The corner where the china cabinet had stood was empty. I knew it would be. I'd been preparing for that. Still stopped me in the doorway for a second. Sandra knocked that afternoon. She'd been at an estate sale down in Corbin a few weeks back with Greg, she said, and she'd found a frame, old wood, solid, nothing fancy. She thought I could use it for a picture. She handed it to me, and that was the whole transaction. No speech. I set the frame on the kitchen table. That night I got out the cookie tin. Went through the photos slowly this time. Found the one I was looking for. Carol at her cousin's wedding in Berea, 1998. Laughing at something off to the side, caught off guard. She didn't know I was taking it. I've always loved it because of that. Because it's actually her. I put it in Sandra's frame. Put it on the mantel. Stood there. That was enough. I'm not a different person. I want to say that plainly. People want the flood to have changed me, cracked me open, given me some new view of the world. It didn't. I'm the same man who pressed his boot into a wet carpet and hung up the phone on his brother. I know my neighbors now. Before, I knew their names. I know the War Council works even when you're running it alone, maybe especially then. I know you put the car keys down. And I know the difference between losing a cabinet and losing a photo. It's not a small difference. It's fall again. We've had rain this week. Nothing serious, but I check the creek every time. Walk out to the back fence, look at Clover Branch, note the level, watch how fast the surface is moving. It's been fine. Normal. Just water going where water goes. Sergeant comes every time without being asked. He sniffs the bank, does whatever assessment he's doing, and then turns back toward the house and looks over his shoulder. I take one more look at the creek. Then I follow him in. The kettle goes on. The floor's cold through my socks. It's still new enough that I notice it. The photo's on the mantel. I look at Sergeant. He looks at the couch. I nod. He gets up there and turns twice and lies down, and that's that. Some things change. Not because the flood made me softer, just because he's been through it too, and he knows where home is now, and so do I. Lock the door. That's it. That's all there is.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'll be back every Tuesday and Thursday with a new one. If you got time, click on the link on the screen and we'll keep it going. Until next time, see ya!